let's talk about inflation and the things that go into that. The reason why we spend so much time talking about the Federal Reserve and inflation is because economics and politics certainly intersect. And that's why we try to explain what that means to everyday folks. And, think about, for example, this past week, it looked like President Biden was trying to out-Trump Trump.
It really did. Yeah, the announcements of additional tariffs on Chinese goods. President Biden came out and said that he was going to say take the 25% tariff on electric vehicles from China and let's bump that up to 100%. But it's kind of interesting if you think about some of the things as far as what he was applying tariffs to. Some of these are almost essential to what I think is part of his agenda for the greening of the economy, right? Batteries, electric vehicles, things like that. But then also the scope of it. We don't really import cars from China. I mean, I don't think that really it amounts to anything in the trade statistics. And so maybe it's a little bit more symbolic than actual substance there, but it does seem like, whatever happens in the election, there are likely more tariffs coming on Chinese imports to the U.S., which is a type of a tax on consumers.
No question. So both sides, and I do want to talk about that, but both sides talking about increasing tariffs. By the way, I watched this week the Chinese retail stocks doing better. Yeah. So just ironic that that's happening. If we're trying to, have more domestic involvement, they are doing better on their retail side, number one. And number two, you nailed it. These tariffs will push up a tax, if you will, and are inflationary on U.S. consumers when at a time we're trying to lower inflation. So we have seen this push and pull between monetary policy, what the Federal Reserve is trying to do, and fiscal policy, where they continue to spend and do inflationary tactics.
That's right. Yeah, it is causing all sorts of turbulence. And the question is which one is going to win out? Now, my guess is that in terms of the Fed's path for monetary policy, that they might need to then try to hold rates where they are a little bit longer than what they might otherwise want to, just so that we can get back towards that 2% target. Because the tariffs, they would increase prices that consumers pay. So it's not just paid by the country or the companies in that country that are exporting to the United States. Now, it's not a full pass-through. So if there's $1 tariff, doesn't mean that consumers are going to pay $1 more. It's oftentimes shared between them. But it is slightly inflationary, makes the Fed's job a little bit harder, and it probably means that we're going to have this more gradual path of rate cuts ahead of us instead of something aggressive.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we called that higher for longer a long time ago, and we are certainly seeing that right now. But, we talk about inflation and who it hurts. Obviously, the lower income strata feel it more because of the cost of food, for example, is a bigger part of their budget. But certainly retirees as well feel this, Brian. We talk about, how that can happen. For example, there's distributions that are going from the one generation to the next is going to be in the trillions of dollars.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And that's one of the things that oftentimes happens when you have higher inflation is you do get this wealth transfer. One of them that a lot of economists that we focus on is that when you have a surprise increase in inflation, you get a wealth transfer from savers to borrowers. And if you think about the demographics there, as far as who are the biggest savers, it's retirees. They're people who have spent their life accumulating assets and wealth, working for it. They have the savings, but suddenly you have a surprise inflation. The people who borrowed at the low rates, oftentimes younger people, or the federal government, they're the ones who benefit from a higher inflation because the real debt burden, so the cost in terms of goods and services that you give up to pay for that debt, goes down. So you do get that wealth transfer.
And you talk about, for example, people and how they react and they make changes. If you're not working with a world-class fee-only fiduciary like Annex Wealth Management that plugs in inflation numbers in planning, people can overreact. And we've started to see that not people that are our clients, but this unrealistic planning that they begin to do when they see higher inflation.
That's right. And I think that there's really two dimensions to that. One is as far as when people see inflation, they might actually take actions that can make their situation worse than what it needs to be. They panic. They maybe make some rash decisions, or they make decisions about, oh, you know what? I can't retire now. Instead of being able to retire at 65, I have to wait until 70. Where the fact is, maybe inflation, it's not that bad, where they might want to consider postponing retirement only a year or so. Or maybe you just have a different allocation, right? One of the key things that I really try to coach clients on is let's focus on what we can control. That oftentimes involves what's your asset allocation, and then also what's your income and your spending behaviors. The rest of it, yes, it's very important for us to consider, but if you focus on those three things, how you're allocated, your income, and your spending, and especially the spending for people who are in retirement, that can go a long way to alleviating some of the fears.
And of course, when you see inflation, there's just generally a cost of living adjustment, a COLA adjustment that happens with Social Security, meaning that your Social Security payment might go up, but on the other side, your Medicare premium might be going up as well. That's the reason why we spent so much time putting together a white paper, which is now available.
Yep, annexwealth.com/inflation. In fact, you can go there this weekend and you can grab it.